Hi folks, book haul time once more, and the ones that I'm going to share with you today are mostly vintage paperbacks, kind of A format, mass market paperback size. They were all picked up in various charity / used bookshops. Whilst I was away with my wife, I delighted her, I'm sure, by dragging her around several of these establishments. There were 2 Oxfam bookshops in York, plus an Amnesty International bookshops, first one of those I've been in. That was actually the best of the 3. And then an Oxfam bookshop in Harrogate, plus a regular British Heart Foundation charity shop, not a bookshop, but they'd in Ripon, I think, near York, near Harrogate, and they had recently had a collection dropped on them. And so as you'll see, there were a bunch of things from there too. And then the last place that I went to was a very quirky old used bookshop, very higgledy-piggledy, piles of books everywhere, also in Harrogate, called Books for All. And I came out of there with armfuls of books. They weren't like super cheap, but really not much more than charity shop prices. So I'm going to struggle to recall now which shop each of these came from. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to go through them, see if you can guess. So first up, and in no particular order, is H. Beam Piper, Little Fuzzy, which I've heard good things about as a bit of a nostalgia kind of read. And then also Fuzzy Sapiens, which I believe is the sequel. I'm not sure how many more there are in this series. I've heard H. Beam Piper's writing is pretty good. I'm pretty sure it's H. Beam Piper that did a book called, it's either called or about Space Vikings, which I really like the sound of, so I'm going to look out for that as well. So these guys are, I hesitate to call them Ewoks, but that's kind of what they remind me of. Extraterrestrials of some kind. And I've been interested to get the Hugh Manx Commonwealth books by Alan Dean Foster, and in no particular order. I already had the Tar Ein Krang book, which is the sort of first one. And then I got, in the New English Library, I got Nor Crystal Tears, which I believe is a prequel set sometime before the events in Tar Ein Krang. And then Orphan Star, I believe, is the second one after Tar Ein Krang, and then Blood Hype, which is the third one. There are like a zillions in this series altogether. So I've made a good start. They are a mixed bag quality-wise. 2 of them are pretty good, pretty bright on the spine. One of them is a bit yellowed. None of them are especially creased, actually. This is not vintage by any means. But CJ Cherry's Precursor, which I think is in the sort of foreigner world. There's a Foreigner trilogy, of which I have 2 or 3, I think, and then this one follows on from the third one, so it's like a post-trilogy book, and there are a bunch more of them as well, which I could have got, but I decided that I would. I don't know why, honestly. It doesn't normally hold me back. I thought I would actually read Foreigner and maybe one of its sequels to see if I enjoy it before doubling down and buying a whole bunch more of CJ Cherry books. Gregory Benford and Gordon Eklund collab, Find the Changeling. A rather nice sphere. It's in pretty good condition. Unbroken spine, not faded. And that is, let's see, the changeling could become anyone or anything, man, woman, child, or animal. It was endowed with an inborn lust for disorder and destruction. So this is like an agent of chaos. Now it has chosen the plague-ridden planet of Alve for its next mission, to throw an entire universe into chaos and madness. So that sounds like a little bit, a bit like if you're a Star Trek fan, a bit like Q from Star Trek Next Generation, just like likes fucking with us, basically. So I think that has a similar vibe to me. And I picked up these rather nice Brian Aldiss books. One is Galaxies Like Grains of Sand. Some of the best sheer horror tales to have been written since Victorian times. Science fiction at its best. So this presents the history of our future. It's Brian Aldiss's brilliant epic chronicle of mankind's next 40 million years. From the end of the ultimate race war, it traces man's evolution through the unimagined heights of civilization to the final dissolution of the galaxy itself. So I don't know if that's like I think it is written like a future history, and there are so there's the war millennia, there's the sterile millennia, the robot millennia, the mingled millennia, the dark, the star, the mutant, the megalopolis, and the ultimate millennia. And then we've got Space, Time and Nathaniel, which I think I'm right in saying was Brian Aldiss' first collection of short stories. And it's split into 3 sections, Space, Time, and, you guessed it, Nathaniel. And this book's got 3 different introductions. One from 1956 by, let's see, by, I think Brian Aldiss, actually. And then one from 1965, also by Brian Aldiss. And then one from 1979, so all by the author. But obviously this has been reissued a number of times. So it's originally from the 50s. This is a reprint from in the Panther, Granada, from the late 70s, I would think. Well, 79, I would guess, since that is when the introduction it was written. Yeah, 79. So there's 2 Brian Aldisses. Which pile shall I do next? Let's do this one. Walter M. Miller, he of the Canticle for Leibowitz. This is a sequel. I don't know how directly it's a sequel, called St. Leibowitz and the Wild Horsewoman, which I've heard is not great and not the masterpiece that Canticle is considered to be. But I got it. It's in pretty good condition. It's in the orbit. It's a reprint. Or is it? Nearly 40 years after the publication of A Canticle for Leibowitz, one of the most important and profound science fiction novels of all time, comes St. Leibowitz and the Wild Horsewoman, a brutal, brilliant and thrilling tale of mystery, mysticism and divine madness. In the midst of a post-nuclear dark age, the Catholic Church, riven by internal strife, is still involved in a bitter power struggle with the temporal leaders of the devastated USA, etc. And then I have a Jack Vance book, Ports of Call, a novel of the Gaian Reach. So I'm still yet to read any Jack Vance, naughty science fiction fan. So I don't know where this, if there's like a bunch of them in this Gaian Reach stuff, there might well be. So this is from 1999. Myron Taney has taken a degree in space studies, but he has much to learn when he first boards a ship. Enthralled to his zany aunt, Dame Hester LaJoy, Myron accompanies her when she sets off in her space yacht to find a faraway fountain of youth. Her captain flatters her agreeably, but when Myron points out that the man is a swindler, Hester maroons poor Myron on an inhospitable planet with barely his passage home. Thus, Myron is given the perfect opportunity to live out his childhood fantasies of intergalactic adventure, alien encounters and exotic romance, or starve to death. Luckily, the tramp cargo vessel Glicker is just then in need of a supercargo, and Myron is it. So that is not the fantasy novel I assumed it was going to be. It is in space. As a matter of principle now, if I find a New English Library book with the cool covers from the 1970s, regardless of who it's by and what it's about, I just buy it because I like the covers. I wouldn't say that I'm collecting them all yet, but I'm certainly heading that way. So that's Pirates of Venus, which is the first of the Venus stories by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I might well do a video on those soon. I enjoyed doing the Barsoom books. And then this is number 5 in the Venus series. I think I've got another one on my shelf somewhere. I'm not sure where that fits. This is The Wizard of Venus. I think these are Bruce Pennington covers. Certainly he did the covers for the Barsoom books in this same livery. Pretty sure it is. I don't think it'll be credited though. And then I also got, it's not an Edgar Rice Burroughs, but Lloyd Biggle Jr. Again, a Pennington cover in the New English Library. All the Colours of Darkness. In the summer of 1986, the Universal Transmitting Company, after a long series of inexplicable failures, public indifference and financial problems, has finally perfected a matter transmitter capable of transporting a person instantaneously from terminals scattered throughout the US to any major city in any foreign country. This transmitter, created by the genius of Chief Engineer Ted Arnold, represents man's ultimate conquest of time. Blah, 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 blah. It seems disaster has struck. Private investigator... A PI is requested to try and find out what's wrong, and what follows is not only a gripping and strange adventure story, but science fiction at its best, exploring the fate of mankind. And then I found a nice Planet Stories, which I believe used to be a magazine, so I don't know what the relationship between this issue of books and the magazine was, but this is The Hounds of Scathe by Lee Brackett. And this will date back to the so it's this kind of Sword and Planet gig in the style of it's strongly influenced by, I imagine, Ujima Flip, Edgar Rice Burroughs and the Barsoom books. So in The Ginger Star, mercenary Eric John Stark travelled to the dying world of Scathe in search for his missing foster father, only to find himself hunted by the government and subject of a revolutionary prophecy. Now, with the help of a beautiful seer, a handful of battle-scarred freedom fighters and a pack of telepathic hounds capable of killing legions with their minds, Stark must topple the Wandsman's corrupt regime before they close the world's starport and leave him stranded in a galactic backwater. And as usual with a Lee Brackett book, someone mentions the fact that she wrote Empire Strikes Back, which she didn't, of course, write, at least not the movie that we all saw. She wrote the first draft of a screenplay for a movie that might have been the sequel to Star Wars, if it wasn't all that successful. But it was. So that is planetary romance, Sword and Planet, whatever you want to call it, with muscle-bound heroes and beautiful, scantily clad women. I'm certainly expecting and and hoping to find in there. I have read a couple of Lee Brackett's books. I've read The Long Tomorrow and The Big Jump, and I really like her writing. So these are probably better written than Edgar Rice Burroughs' books, frankly, but similar sort of vibe. So I'm in Books for All, which is a used bookshop in Harrogate, which has pretty extensive science fiction and fantasy section. It's all a bit higgledy-piggledy and a bit variable in the quality department, I suspect, but still worth a look through. Bit of Doctor Who Trekkie stuff down there, a couple of other things, a few hardbacks which I'll have a look at, and there's more over here. Bit of Larry Niven I can see there, bits and pieces. So actually it's in alphabetical order, which is nice. Bit of H. Beam Piper there. I'll have a look at that little pile, see what I can see. They look like in not bad nick. All the S's again. I'll have a closer look at those. T's. Etc. etc. Quite a lot. Quite a lot. I don't think I'll take you on my full shelf browsing because it's quite a lot of it, and it is quite high. So I'm going to need all my faculties to ensure I don't fall over, frankly. I need to focus on browsing. Right. Well, you can see there's quite a variety. More on this later. And then we have Orson Scott Card. This isn't vintage particularly. Ender's Shadow. I've read Ender's Game, obviously, and I've read a couple of Speak of the Dead and a couple of others, but I haven't read the Shadow trilogy. I think there's 3, and these are, one might say, a retelling of Ender's Game from the perspective of one of his friends, who's let's see if I can remember it. Yeah, Bean. So I don't know if it's like a straight retelling just from a different perspective, or if there's more to it than that. I don't know, but apparently it's pretty good. I found a Philip Jose Farmer Knight of Light with a deconstructed lady on the front. I have now read a Philip Jose Farmer. I read the first of the Riverworld books the other week, which I quite enjoyed. It was a bit mad, but I quite liked it. So I don't know what that one's about. And then I was pleased to find. So these are nicely numbered. I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of. Wait for it. Let me put them in order. E.C. Tubbs, Dumarest of Terror books, of which there are like 33 or something crazy. So I'm not really collecting them, but now I've got 5 of them in this format. I'm feeling compelled, strangely, to do so. Certainly, I'd like to get a few more. I've got here as well, slightly different, an earlier version of The Winds of Gath, which I think is the first one. Gath, a strange world with strange potentialities, and that was why Simon brought his wife there, dead in her coffin. Why the matriarch of Kund went there to pick her successor. Why the Prince of Emond went there to win the world. But Dumarest was there for no reason other than he was stranded, a traveller in low passage without the money to get home, without even knowing where home was. So I think the basic thrust of the meta arc, if you like, the story arc, is generally Dumarest trying to find his way back to Earth, and largely until the end, I believe, of the 30-odd books. unsuccessfully. So the Arrow books there, I'll just show you the covers quickly. So that is Lalia, pretty cool. And then there is, so that's book 6. Then there is Technos. Then there is Technos. And then there is Varukia. And then there is Mayen. Can you see that okay? There we go. And then there is John Dell, which is book 10. Very slender, 150 odd pages. Sort of thing you could bash through in an afternoon if you were concentrating. Where are we? Probably about halfway. I found book 14 of, I think there are 25 in total, of these Venture SF books, which were issued in the 80s, and they were issued one a month for a few years. And I think the intent was to publish books that, for the first time in the UK, that just had never been in print here before. And I don't know if that's exclusively true for all of them, but certainly that was the true in many cases. So this is number 14 of 25, the Timeliner trilogy by Richard C. Meredith. So that includes At the Narrow Passage, No Brother, No Friend, and Vestiges of Time. So I don't know what that's like, but I'm really quite taken with the format. I've got one other, which is Star Wolf by Edmund Harrison, which is a bit of a tatty copy, actually. So the images are all Eddie Jones images, and they were quite often reused. So they weren't done specifically for this series. So you see some images here which have been used on other books elsewhere. There's one which I forget which one it is now, which has a cover image that was used on the US edition of Nova by Samuel Delaney. Anyway, because they're quite a nice format and they're quite unusual books, and because they've got a number on them, I feel compelled to collect them. And it's quite handsome. This one's in quite nice condition. It needs a bit of a clean up, actually. So I won't, you can, you know, I had a quick look online, and you can find them, but obviously taking a bit of a risk with the condition. So I think I'll just bide my time, and if I see them out in the wild, then, and it's one that I haven't got and it's in good condition, then I'll just buy it, and I'll gradually accumulate them over time. So what else have we got here? John Brunner, Web of Everywhere. He was the visitor in a society revolutionized and troubled by a transportation device that let you walk through a door and be anywhere in the world instantly. At a time when unauthorized travel had caused the violent deaths of countless millions and the survivors were quaking in fear. And in a world where the invasion of privacy was the ultimate crime, and where his obsession with visiting places where he had no right to be led him on a perilous adventure towards his own destruction. Well, then I was happy to get, I like this cover, David Brin's Sundiver, which is the first of the Uplift books. Pretty nice, pretty colourful. This is a little bit spine creased and maybe a tiny bit faded, but generally speaking is in pretty tight condition. And then Infinity's Shore, which I think is one of the later books in the Uplift series. Let's see if I can find out when. 5. It's the 5th of 6, I think. Yes, book 2 of the second Uplift trilogy. So book. Does that make it book 5? Yeah, book 5. Again, it's in the orbit. It's in pretty nice condition. So I've heard that the first trilogy is pretty good. The second one, not so much. There's another Jack Vance, which is one of the Dying Earth books, Kugel's Saga. I think it's the 3rd or 4th. Let me see. Yeah, 4th, I think. So Dying Earth is the first one. The Eyes of the Overworld is the second. Then Rialto the Marvellous is the 3rd. And then this is Kugel's Saga. I haven't read. I think I've got the Eyes of the Overworld, but I don't have the Dying Earth, and I certainly don't have the 3rd one. So I gradually accumulate those. And then I found a funny little thing, and I don't know how many there are. This is number 3 in a series of classics of science fiction, which is this is a very bijou hardback book, and very mini sort of is it A format? Let's see, B format paper, the size of a B format paperback, and I forget what that is now. There's a proper name for the hardback of this size. Is it Octavo? Maybe I think it's the smallest kind of size of paperback that you can get. And that is The Shores of Another Sea by Chad Oliver. So this has got uplifted baboons, I think. Probably the best anthropological SF novel ever written. Powerful, convincing and dramatic, so says Gregory Benford. I'm intrigued to find out how many of these there are, because they're quite handsome little books. It was, I paid like £2 or something for this in a charity shop. It is in really nice condition. Published in the UK in the mid-80s by Robson Books. So I'm going to have a little look online and see how many of them there are. I've got Del Rey / Ballantyne best of books, this time called Wayne Smith, Richard and over at Vintage SF, and Matt at Science Fiction Reads, and Ira over at Science Fiction Words of Wonder have been going crazy over these best of books and are doing a little series related to them. You don't find them that often in the UK because they're US printed books, but they do turn up occasionally. I've got one or two others. I think I've got the Hal Clement one and one other, can't remember which. And now this one, called Rainer Smith. I found a Bruce Sterling, Heavy Weather. 2031, the atmosphere is wrecked. The Stormtroopers media unit, that's troopers, T-R-O-U-P-E-I-S, media unit, scientists, techno freaks get their kicks from weather. Hooked up to drones through virtual reality rigs, they can plunge like a maddened darts into the eye of a storm and surf a ride from hell. So this sounds like the plot of Twister from whenever it was, in the 90s probably. This was written in actually the mid-90s. So I wonder if this came before Twister or after it. Their holy grail, the F6, a tornado so intense it's off the scale, dangerous in the extreme, and also dangerous, certain people's sick dreams, full of tornado trails, shining insane paths of endless howling destruction. The high-tech wonders of a decaying world and a bunch of wild nomads longing to be blown away. Multimedia guru Bruce Sterling's superb Heavy Weather is not to be missed. And then I've got a Piers Anthony book, Triple Détente. Don't know anything about that. And then an Ian Watson, Oracle, a format in the Vista, which is pretty nice. When Tom Ryan stops his car late at night on a dark road for a man dressed as a Roman centurion, his first thought is that he's picked up one of those amateur reenactors. But the man, Marcus Appius Silvanus, appears to only speak Latin, and he insists the year is AD 60 and that the British Queen is Boudica, and that he and his men of the 14th Gemina are in hot pursuit of her. Said as a Roman in the US somewhere. I assume it's the US. No, English countryside. And then I found a Ballard's short story collection, Day of Forever. It's in quite nice condition. It's in the Flamingo. Very slender book, actually. It can't have that many stories in it. I have heard it said that Ballard reached the peak of his writing capabilities in short story form. And this one has the short story, The Assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, considered as a downhill motor race, which I've seen in other collections or anthologies, actually. So this one's from the mid-1990s. It's pretty fleet, under 125 pages. What else have we got here? Another Alan Dean Foster in different format to the others, Mid-Flinks. Don't know where that fits in the series. And then a few weeks back, I picked up books 3, 4 and 5 in Piers Anthony's Cluster series. And so I was pleased to find Volume 1, Vicinity Cluster, in really nice condition in the Granada for a couple of quid. And then also Volume 2, Chaining the Lady, which is notable chiefly for the scantily clad lady on the front. And but unfortunately, this one's slightly beaten up. It's very spine creased and a bit faded and a bit rubbish. But again, it was only a couple of quid, not a big investment. And it does mean that I now have all 5 of them. So I'll get around to reading them at some point in a parallel universe where I have the time. There's another Alan Dean Foster in the same format as the others, The End of the Matter. And again, I'm not sure where that fits. I think it's, yeah, this is the 3rd book featuring Flinks. I found a Roger Zelazny, Lord of Light, which is in the Methuen. It's mid-80s, I would have thought. Yeah, 86. Picture a planet where gods walk as men, but wield vast and hidden powers. Here they have made the stage on which to build a subtle pattern of alliance, love and deadly enmity. For the rival between light and dark will last as long as the immortal contestants themselves. Are they immortal? Who are these gods who rule the destiny of a teeming world? Their names include Brahma, Kali, Krishna, Ratri, and also he who was called Buddha, Lord of Light, Siddhartha. But how did he also acquire the name of Sam? Here too is his antithesis, the death god Yama, and yet it is Yama who calls the spirit of Sam back into bodily form at the start of this epic narrative. Here is fantasy writing of the highest caliber. So that sounds like pretty mad. I haven't read that. Let me know if you have, if it's any good. Sticking with Roger Zelazny is The Last Defender of Camelot, which is in very nice condition in the Sphere. It's got a naked fella with part of his head missing, looking at some turrets. There are 15, a short story collection. Okay, there are 15 strange and beautiful stories in this collection, spanning the full spectrum of Zelazny's remarkable career. Zelazny is one of the most acclaimed and honoured writers in the science fiction field, and these dazzling and memorable stories explain why. Then, in a charity shop in Ripon, somebody had obviously dropped several of their Edmund Cooper collections. So we've got Seahorse in the Sky in the coronet, looking very handsome, a little bit faded on the spine, but not too bad. Very nice, a stimulating and entertaining novel, apparently. And then also in coronet, Slaves of Heaven. And another one in the coronet, 5 to 12. Looks pretty nice. The 21st century is drawing to an end. Earth's social structure has undergone a complete reversal. Women dominate society and men have been reduced to the status of manipulated objects. It's been that way in my house for some years. Into this changed world comes Dion Quern, a self-styled troubadour who refuses to conform to social norms. But he discovers that women are superior to men in both bodily strength and number. And how can one man hope to change a whole society? A brilliantly ingenious blend of satire and science fiction, apparently. And then the final Edmund Cooper is The Cloud Walker, also in the coronet. So those are pretty nice. I have a few on my shelves already, so those will get added to that once I make some space. And then I found The Space Machine by Christopher Priest in the Victor Gollancz SF Classics, which is the predecessor of the Masterworks editions. So this would have been from the 90s, I would have thought. 88, in fact. And this is number 22 in the collection. I don't know how many there were. When Edward Turnbull finds himself in an embarrassing situation in a young lady's bedroom, he little suspects he's on the brink of the most astonishing adventure of the century. For in deepest Surrey during the 1890s, he's introduced to an extraordinary invention, Sir William Reynolds' time machine. Before long, the impulsive Edward has stumbled on a discovery all of his own. Though what moves through time can also sometimes move through space. But when Sir William's machine deposits him in a seething mass of voracious weed, he's more than a little perturbed to find himself on the planet Mars. And now Edward must summon all of his British courage and Victorian ingenuity to warn Earth of the approaching nightmare of the war between the worlds. So, a mutation between the time machine and War of the Worlds, apparently. So, it's Christopher Priest, so it's going to be well written. It's billed in the cover as a scientific romance, which is what science fiction used to be called way back in the day. So that sounds a bit mad. I'm keen to read that. That, I think, is everything. So that's everything that I currently have that's not yet in my shelves that I've recently acquired one way or another and that I have now shared with you. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.